Hi, everybody. Welcome to another iteration of SCF's webinar series. Today, we'll be covering EV charging for businesses and how, whether you're a business owner or an EPC developer, that you can benefit from learning about how sustainable capital finance is approaching this market and how we all might be able to get to work together to not only leave a lasting positive environmental impact, but also generate revenue for all parties involved. Let's get into it. Today's agenda is as follows. We'll start by discussing a little bit about who SCF is and why we're confident in the solutions that we are discussing today. We'll then provide some general knowledge regarding the EV marketplace, and then get a little bit more specific on the types of sites that we're targeting and why. We'll finish off by showcasing an example project, discussing next steps, and answering any questions you may have. Your question box should be on the right side of your screen. Feel free to enter them whatever. And we'll get to as many as we can before the end of our half hour today. So a little bit about SCF, or Sustainable Capital Finance. Founded in 2012, our primary focus has always been the underserved C&I or commercial marketplace, where traditional financing options may struggle to find solutions. SCF has thrived in providing competitive solutions for churches, schools, golf clubs, businesses, and more, to the tune of over $500 million in contracted distributed generation. Working with some of the world's largest independent power producers, SCF has strong financial backing and a network of over 200 plus EPC and developer partners nationwide that have helped us execute each project and each future project to the best of our ability. Now, today's discussion is about EV charging for businesses, and we at SCF are not just excited for EV charging for no reason. We have a lot of data to back that up. And the need for infrastructure and actual EV charging stations is really, stronger now than ever. As you can see mentioned on your screen now, EV sales are not slowing down, as they were up 8% in 2024, and that's from 2023. And it accounted for a similar 8% of all vehicles sold. Industry experts are forecasting this rises to 10% in 2025. In comparing this to publicly available chargers, and the data that supports or showcases that is relatively laughable. Currently, there are around 200,000 chargers available for the public today, with nearly 85% of those level 2 chargers. Now, this was nearly a 20% increase in 2024, but given the rate that they are selling and making new electric vehicles, the ratio continues to struggle to make up ground, as it sits currently at 23-1 of electric vehicles available in America to the number of EV chargers available. Now, this is a large basis for our solutions we'll discuss today. But as you'll find, not every charger is best for every property. As you can see in our next slide, there are 3 different types of chargers, and we'll discuss each here briefly. Level 1 chargers are your home-based trickle chargers. These are generally not the best option if you're looking for a full charge, unless you have at least a full day of charging planned out, as they generally don't provide a full charge for 20 to 70 hours, depending on the EV and the size of the battery. Now, level 2 chargers are the next step up, and they're the most common chargers that you will see. They're very common to see at a hotel or an office building, often located at tennis and golf clubs, so that a member can get a full charge in over a round of golf or a day at the club. Now, one thing to note is that while SCF does not have a programmatic approach to providing level 2 chargers, SCF will consider providing level 2s in addition to level 3s at a site that warrants it. So generally speaking, SCF may ask for information related to the number of members or the number of employees who drive electric vehicles, and then just a general estimate of how many are planning to buy one in the future to help us determine the number of level 2 chargers that could be considered in addition to level 3 chargers. And that takes us to the next charger level, which is that level 3 charger, also known as a DC fast charger. These only need 15 to 45 minutes for full charge. You'll often find 5 to 10 of these located near each other at a supercenter or a mall, as they're best suited for someone completing a 30-minute visit, whether that's for some shopping, a meal, or a gym workout. DC fast chargers can be much more effectively monetized than a level 2 charger because it's has a much shorter turnaround time in the charging, and therefore the rate at which you can charge is much higher. Therefore, people will pay essentially for the added convenience of getting a quick full charge, essentially, and therefore it acts as a great revenue opportunity for property owners in attractive locations. And what are those attractive locations? Well, here is how SCF is currently viewing the marketplace when evaluating a site for potentially putting EV fast chargers. We're looking for a high local EV traffic. Essentially, are people driving EVs and buying new EVs in this area? And we're also essentially going to determine that as EV growth rate. That's an interchangeable term you'll hear. We're looking at a location. We're then looking at the people themselves in this area. Is this a high population area with a high median income? And we'll have certain metrics to look at for those numbers. Essentially, usually around 100 to 200,000 minimum, and around $80 to $90,000 median income, or sort of the minimum projections or thresholds that we'll have for a site that qualifies. And then we'll look at how close these locations are to freeways and interstates, and determine if there are already chargers in the general area, and then put all this info into a model that provides a utilization rate per hour, per charger, per day. And using average time of use estimates regarding the general costs of using these chargers in different situations throughout the day, we can essentially determine if a site would be worth the investment. And generally speaking, sites that are places of business where there is a half-hour turnover are always going to look much more competitive from a modeling standpoint. And that can include sites that you're seeing here: shopping centers, grocery stores, gyms, restaurants, but can even expand out to hotels, and churches, and golf clubs in the right situation with the available space. So with a clear need for EV chargers and data to point us in the direction of the sites that are of higher value than others, we have put together our value proposition. And for us, it really consists of 2 points: EV charging revenue upside and certified energy savings. A win-win, really. Now, the EV charging revenue upside opportunity is as follows: no investment needed, with the opportunity to participate in up to 10% of all the revenue that comes through from the charging stations. Now, that 10% number is the post-EBITDA number, and the only fees that you'll pay for from that 10% are network fees, usually network connectivity fees, which are very minimal. Now, this site will not only attract new customers, but provide an additional amenity to your property for your existing user base. And most importantly, no ongoing maintenance will be needed by the site host, as we are highly incentivized to be on site as soon as possible to help fix any broken equipment. Because if that equipment is not making any money, our investors are not making any money, and that is a problem for everybody. And the second pillar of our offer, and really the most crucial, certified energy savings via the PPA or power purchase agreement. Now, the goal of our PPA offering is never to provide the most competitive savings on the planet. There are other financiers who are out there making that their focal point, and we do bid good luck to them. But our goal is to provide a backstop to you in the event that charging revenue does not meet or exceed expectation. We do so by providing you power at a cost that is less than the current cost of energy you are currently paying, which generally the market target discount for that is around 10%. And by doing so, we ensure for you that regardless of how a specific site performs in any given year, that your net operating income will increase via the savings generated from cheaper electricity, all via the solar installed at the site. And not only does it provide savings, but if you have specific ESG or environmental goals, the solar can help contribute towards them and can often attract a more eco-friendly consumer to your business. All general benefits that will help create a win-win solution for the property owner. Now, to bring this all together before showcasing an example project, I want to clarify exactly what SCF is bringing to the table. 1, A scalable charging system providing host-side benefits in the form of solar and battery installed and executed in an efficient manner. 2, a programmatic approach to a single site or a portfolio of opportunities. We can work with whomever on whatever. 3, developmental and operational expertise. With over $500 million in contracted distributed generation projects, we know how to tackle issues that will inevitably arise. And 4, strong financial backing. Working with organizations like NextEra and others, we have strong financial backing as we have had for the last 13 years, and we aren't going anywhere but forwards. And now here's what we expect you as a property owner or developer working with a property owner to bring to this opportunity. A site with space, approximately 12,000 square feet of rooftop and or parking space will be needed. We've tried to incorporate our solutions at quick service locations, Carl's Jr.'s, Taco Bell's, so we can certainly take a look at your site even if you think you have less. But we've found over time that, generally speaking, planter area locations for batteries and or parking spaces that you're willing to give up will generally make the process and the overall solution run a lot smoother. Number 2, allowance for a 30 to 45-day construction period. Now, you'll be surprised at how quick this equipment can be put together, but there will be some amount of time where your business will have to work around the construction process as it goes on. Number 3, as discussed above, a designated area for charger and battery placement. Now, we'll determine this with you as we go through the process of getting familiarized with your site and completing a site visit. Number 4, site access for operations and maintenance will be absolutely paramount to ensuring the project can stay on its desired timelines. Now moving on to the exciting part, in example projects. For this example, I'll be taking a project that was set up for a mixed-use real estate establishment with a decent-sized parking lot and enough energy in the common meters to offset roughly 400,000 kilowatt hours. Now, given the site was mainly rooftop, we were able to secure a competitive bid of $3 a watt for the solar bill cost alone, and used our trusted ESS EVC vendors to put together a total bid of $5.80 per watt for the solar storage and 8 EV chargers. Now, at a site in a highly populated area with high median income and a nearby interstate that was less than a mile away, we were able to forecast nearly 3 hours of utilization per charger per day at this site. Now, this, along with the savings from the PPA, provided an increase of $68,000 in net operating income in year 1 of the term. And while the year 1 revenue projections are great, it's when we start calculating how the revenue projects over the course of the 30-year term that it really stands out compared to the projected PPA savings, as the total revenue share projection over 30 years is approximately $6.5 million. Now, we get to this projection by first making our largest jump in utilization from year 1 to year 2, and that's due to assuming regular traffic patterns to this new location have been established, and the site is now present on all charging networks, and any significant increase due to the overall newness of the location is accounted for from year 1 to year 2. And everything after that is really a flattened out 3 to 5% escalation over the course of the term. Pretty conservative estimates. Now, this paired with the PPA savings accounts to nearly $8 million in new revenue for the property owner, with nearly no risk being taken at all. So I ask you all earnestly, what are we waiting for? And that question is a great segue to our final slide, our process and next steps. Now, if you're a solar integrator, i.e. you're an EPC or developer, please reach out to us. We'll get you set up on our free financing platform, the SCF Suite, where you can enter in the zip code of your site and gauge its potential for EV charging. From there, we'll collect customer info. Our general ask is the last 12 months of utility data, preferably interval data, but bills also work. And then the last 3 years of audited and or CPA reviewed financials. We'll then model the project and provide you with indicative terms. If those terms are agreeable with the customer, we can execute a term sheet and have a kickoff call with all parties before finalizing diligence and hopefully having contract execution in 30 days. If you're a property owner, please also reach out. I'll work directly with you to collect the requisite data before starting the same process of modeling the project and then hopefully generating adequate terms for you all before moving forwards. The hope is that from our first conversation together, we can have an agreement executed in a month. I look forward to evaluating your sites, and that will bring us to the end of today's webinar. Feel free to add any questions you have to the question box, and I will answer as many as possible. Thank you all so much.
Okay, got one here regarding how many parking spaces a normal system size would take up. So it's a great question. Generally, our budget is one additional parking spot, the amount of EV chargers that we're presenting to your location. So for us, in most situations, that range is going to be between 4 and 12 fast chargers. So in a worst case scenario, we're taking, I should say, I guess worst case scenario in the sense of utilization expectations, we would be taking up roughly 5 parking spots, and then on a high end up to 13. That's obviously for single port solutions. If you've got double ports, it could be a little bit less, but most scenarios are one additional parking space to the amount of charging stations we're going to take up, and that kind of goes in hand in hand with one of the topics that we discussed during the call, which was essentially needing space for equipment, right? So if that means a planter area or a grassy knoll area where a battery can be located close to the charging stations is the most ideal and optimal situation. We obviously don't want to take up more parking spots than we need to, and that's obviously more dire for locations that don't have a ton of parking spots, and a little bit less dire, I guess, for situations where we have a larger parking lot and we're okay acquiescing a few spots. And so obviously there might be situations where we don't have a planter area or a piece of grassy area where we can put a battery that's not super far from the charging stations. That would be a situation where putting a battery in a parking spot might be necessary to be able to fit to that site's restrictions. And so in that scenario, we obviously would have to take up a few more parking spaces. But just to summarize, for a general rule of thumb, one additional parking spot in addition to the number of chargers that we're going to be putting at your location. That's a good question. Looks like we have another one coming in regarding the average start to finish timeline for projects. So we're obviously subject to the utility we're working with. Obviously, if they have a large interconnection queue, those are situations where the project can be prolonged. If that's because we're adding a new meter for EV charging, there could be situations where it takes up to 6 to 8 months for a project to get put in ground, sometimes longer in worst case scenarios. I would say in the most optimal scenarios, we can be in ground from the start of our initial conversations in around 6 months. I would say would be the best estimate I could provide to you for getting a project fully executed. Like I said, subject to that specific utility's interconnection queue, and in some situations it can take longer if they're pretty occupied for essentially getting that in. I have a question here regarding the types of properties based on our experience that are good sites for this solution. So we kind of spoke to that throughout the middle portion of the webinar, but for us, one of the most important things that we're going to take a look at is, do we have space for our equipment, right? There might be situations where we need to be able to utilize a few parking spaces. We might have to take up a little bit of your planter area to be able to fully get this equipment. Might need roof space to put the solar if we're not doing a carport or a parking canopy situation. So those would be situations where, if we're looking at a site that doesn't have a lot of space, maybe parking spaces are slanted or not, fully straight, essentially. Those could be situations where there's just more difficult nuance that has to be essentially established from an early going in the conversations for a specific location to determine, can we put a battery here? Can we even put enough solar here to be able to support and offset your current load of consumption? So for us, a site that has enough space for our equipment, that has enough consumption to make a sizable or noticeable difference in your energy savings, and then a site that has relative proximity to an interstate or highway. Obviously, with our solutions, we're playing the long game, and that's how you should view it as well. You're really getting ahead of the curve when it comes to EV charging, but also just the mass selling of electric vehicles in general. And so, for us, the closer we can get to an interstate or a highway, the less likely it is that we'll see other fast chargers or other charging solutions, be installed closer to that interstate or highway in the time of our term, essentially together. So a site that has relative proximity to an interstate that is heavily trafficked, at a site that has enough ample space to not only put our equipment, but also offset some of their load, are sites that we're going to prioritize and be able to provide more competitive terms for. And that can fit a lot of different types of entities, right? That can be a shopping center, that could be a grocery store, that could be a restaurant. We've had a lot of success with churches oftentimes because there's a lot of parking space generally available for some of the larger churches. In a lot of those situations, they have ongoing operations throughout the week, whether it's a coffee shop, daycare, where we have enough consumption to provide solar for, to provide them meaningful PPA savings apart from the upside from the EV charging revenue. And so there are specific parameters we're looking for, but I would say for us, at the very minimum, we don't have space for the equipment. That's a pretty hard obstacle to get over in the initial stages and the early stages, if you will, of a project together. So I have a question here regarding, do we do solar or EV projects outside of California? And I would say yes. It's definitely something we're trying to expand out to. I think for us, it's really on a case-by-case basis. We're going to kind of see how the situation, each state interacts moving forwards with their specific EVC language, how much they're able to support the specific market within their own state, whether that's dispersing NEVI funds, whether that's providing specific programs for funding. California's done a great job recently of revamping the Cali VIP program, which is eligible for the next few months to enter into, which provide a lot of cost competitive, essentially, solutions for us to incorporate into our pricing to be able to pass that along down to our property owners so that they can take advantage of a lot of these systems and not have to pay for or go through the process of submitting for those programs themselves, because they can obviously be arduous at times. So, I think for us, it's really a case-by-case basis. We've looked at Arizona, we've looked at Illinois, we've looked at some states in the Northeast, including Pennsylvania. We're really looking for, first off, does solar pencil in this market? Are we able to provide competitive PPAs in this market? And if so, for us, it's really just about, pairing that with the amount of risk we're able to take at a specific site. So if that's an Illinois location in a suburb where we have, a shopping center or a shopping plaza, that's going to show a lot better for us versus maybe a little bit more remote site, in the Northeast, where the PPA in and of itself maybe isn't as competitive, and therefore bringing in charging stations as well, makes the overall solution tough for us to kind of stomach the amount of risk that we need to take. So every site's going to come with its own risk. And so for us, it's really just taking out a case-by-case basis, looking at the incentives available. Does the solar work? And in those situations, we can try to find a 4 or 6 fast charger solution that could potentially work for a site outside of California. But it's definitely the market that we're, I would say, most prevalent in and can definitely be the most competitive in. I had a question here regarding cities, municipalities, and being able to work with them. Absolutely. I think for us, we're trying to work with as many entity types as we need to get our solutions out there. Municipalities are something we've definitely, we've had solar PV projects completed with. You can check on our website. We've had a few different municipalities that we've worked with to provide solar on. So we know the process for approvals. We know the process for decision making and essentially what that timeline can look like. So, if that means putting a couple of fast chargers at a local location, whether that's the local coffee shop or an area owned by the city itself, in which they're working with the city, I think we're absolutely able to acquiesce. In a lot of situations that might, for office buildings, that might be incorporated with municipalities. Incorporating a level 2 and level 3 charging solution could potentially be more feasible. And in those situations, we'll just essentially look for some captive usage data. Who essentially owns EV chargers in this area, this building specifically, who's driving them? Are they expected to have more employees or members buy them in the future? All situations that we're happy to take a look at for a specific city or municipality. And then for, when it comes to the revenue share of our modeling, we're looking at a 10% number for revenue share, and that's a post EBITDA number, right? You'll see a lot of 30-35% revenue shares out in the market, and those are often, a pre-EBITDA number, not inclusive of all costs associated with providing that charger to that site. So for us, the only cost that we ask our site owners to incur are network connectivity fees, which are extremely minimal. And so that 10% really is, a no frills 10% number, and it's not capped. Essentially, if the site overperforms, the customer gets to participate in that upside. And so that's where our modeling kind of comes into, hey, if you're really, excited about your location, you think your location can really drive a lot of traffic, that is the exact situation where you should reach out to SCF and say, hey, I'm really, excited about charging stations. I really believe in the future of them. I feel like my site's a good fit based on the parameters you provided to us. That's a scenario where, regardless of our projected PPA savings, you're going to see upwards of several $1 million in potential revenue share without incurring any risk, without having to participate in the capital stack, and not having to worry about having to fix charging stations over the course of the term, right? Because we're going to be on site as quickly as possible in case any of this equipment doesn't work, right? Because at the end of the day, if those machines and equipment are not generating income, then we're not making any money, and that is unfortunately breaks the modeling for everyone involved if that's essentially happening. So, like I said, our goal is to be on site and to be able to help and fix things, and that includes the solar as well, not just the charging stations. So happy to work with you guys as those opportunities come through. We'll make sure a copy of this presentation gets out to everyone so that they can review it, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. The information and contact information that will be shared along with a copy of this presentation is what should be used to reach out to us moving forward. So we appreciate your time today and look forward to evaluating your opportunities. Thanks, guys. Cheers.